Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor. That's our Discord server. Go to the link right here in the description. If you do that, you'll bypass the Apple upcharge for $2.99 a month. You get access to the most heat information, conversation, and yes, consternation. You can find it there at Off the Floor. Go to the link right here in the description, and you can cancel at any time. Also, check out the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network. Includes Prize Picks. Use the code 5FIVE. Put down $5, so you get $50 to play right away. Legal in the state of Florida. That's right. No IL. Legal in the state of Florida. You can play across the sports spectrum, up to 6 players. Make the heat season interesting. Play Prize Picks. Use the code 5FIVE. Get $50 to play right away. And now, today's episode.
Mercy, luxurious, Heat Nation, yeah, Mercy and Lago, down in Biscayne, yeah, five on the floor, ride for my dogs, where here's the thing, you can check the score, hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds, down in Biscayne. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, inspire, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick on Five Reasons Sports. We got Eternal Bast. You can follow him at Eternal Bast. Of course, Eternal is one of the hosts of our playback stream, so watch the games with us. He's had to suffer through quite a bit this year, as has the rest of our crew. We give credit to Matt, to Ray, to Adele in particular, who've been there pretty much every game, and they've had to watch these collapses time after time after time. If you have missed it, go back a little bit in the archives here. Brady Hawk and I tried to rank the 10 worst losses of the season. Once we got to about 18, we stopped. But if you want to relive any of those with us, Brady said it was the worst 30 minutes of his life. There may be a worse 30 coming at some point, and typically that's the actual time of a Heat fourth quarter. So check that out. Brady and I did that. Just for clarity, Eternal and I are broadcasting this or recording this prior to the Heat playing the Clippers on a Wednesday night, although this probably won't post to the podcast feed until probably after the post-game podcast from that game where Brady, Alex, and myself will be. But today's topic, the floor plan, we're going to talk about Bam. And we've done several episodes on Bam throughout the season in what has been an interesting and I think surprising season for him, although his numbers are now starting to look like what we expected. But the way it's happened was not what we expected, which was typically Bam has gotten off to hot starts in seasons and then has tailed off. Last year, he had fewer field goal attempts in every month that followed the first month of the year. Every month, the field goal attempts went down. This year, Eternal, his numbers have all been going up. And I'll go through it here a little bit, but just on the splits that he's had this season, and that's kind of what I want to touch on. He got off to a very slow start. I don't think there's any way around this. I don't know how much the slow start affected what ended up happening with Jimmy. That feels more contract related, in terms of his struggles. But at this point now, Bam's numbers are 17.8 points, 10 rebounds, 4.4 assists. Now, just to look at last season, he was at 19.3 points, 10.4 rebounds, 3.9 assists. So essentially, he's had a drop of 1.5 points. His rebounds are down 0.4. His assists are up 0.5. All of the other metrics are about where they were last season. He's shooting 49% from the floor overall. But on two-pointers, he's actually exactly the same as last year, 53%. It's just that he's shot more threes, so he's at 31% there as opposed to 36. And again, this is going into the Clipper game. Free throw percentage, same, 75%. He's down 1 free throw attempt per game, which is a little bit disappointing. We can talk about that. But overall, I mean, he's put up good numbers, and if you look at the last, month to 6 weeks, particularly after Jimmy was traded, the numbers have actually been above career norms, but they're not winning. And that's what I want to talk to you about, because that's obviously not all on him, but it just like Tyler's strong play early in the season was not translating to winning, Bam's is not either. Why do you think, let's start there before we get into kind of where Bam fits and where to go forward. Why do you think that is?
I just think the team is very unsettled. Unsettled more so on court than they are in the locker room. But the more they continue to be unsettled on court, the more they bleeds into the locker room. I can speak about what the energy of the locker room when I was in Atlanta, and that was probably the worst game of the season. That had to be the worst game of the season. You're muted.
Do you know what, Eternal? Do you know what, Eternal? Their season has been so bad that we got to the end of the podcast.
Y'all forgot about Atlanta?
And I forgot about them scoring 86 points in Atlanta because they didn't blow a lead. And I forgot about them losing by 40 at home to Utah in the game after Jimmy was suspended. Those two, now maybe they should have, those two did not even make our list. We did 27 minutes, and those two did not make our list. I'm sorry, but I just had to interject because you had to suffer through that in person. That might have been the hardest watch of the season.
Oh, to God, yes.
I mean, that had to have been the hardest watch of the season, but that's why they scored 87 in regulation against the Hawks. Anyway, I'm sorry, but that just reminded me of our oversight, which others have pointed out to me since the episode aired.
Yeah, man. It just, when I was in the locker room, Ethan, and I definitely want to hear your thoughts about like what energy you have seen as the season has progressed. When I was in the locker room, you could tell that some guys were annoyed that they just lost another game. Like, but the energy in the locker room overall didn't seem how the season has been going, right? I think,
Right.
I mean, like, guys are still in there laughing, joking, staff still in there like cracking jokes and stuff like that. And that's not to say before y'all like, get off on a tangent that they're not taking the season seriously. Just it didn't look like there was a cloud over the room when I walked in. You just kind of tell guys were annoyed. Now, since then, I have seen Bam be more demonstrative on court when somebody takes a shot, or if they turn the ball over, they do something. I have seen Bam be more demonstrative in that, and expressing disappointment or frustration and things of that nature, even with himself. I mean, you go back to the very last game when he had the air ball. Now, to give Bam some credit, he had just hit the very clutch open three in the corner, which was another play that was drawn up for Andrew Wiggins. Drew two, kicked it out. This play was drawn up for Andrew Wiggins at the top of the right wing, out of bounds. He gets the ball, they crowd to, he throws it to Bam on top of the key. He's wide open. It's not like it's a rush shot for Bam. He missed it. But I think as we look at where Bam is right now, and then you ask the question of they're not winning, it just don't seem like, man, they're really on top of things with each other, in chemistry of a flow, of a pecking order and things like that. Like we see Ethan, some games they open up, and obviously, it's game to game basis, but we see some games where they try to get Bam going early. We see some games where they're trying to get Tyler going early. We've even seen some games where they try to get Andrew going. It doesn't necessarily seem like there's a true pecking order of,
Well, before there was, I mean, or at least before this season, and it was Jimmy as much as he wanted to be offensive minded, and then it would be Jimmy in the last 6 minutes. Now we've talked a lot about the clutch numbers and Tyler's kind of league leading or league trailing numbers in the clutch, whereas Bam's have been much better, but there have been circumstances where they've much better, but they've gone to Bam a little bit more lately, and they haven't had success. But I mean, going into tonight, and again, we're recording this on Wednesday, so we'll see what happens against the Clippers. But in the 6 games in March, This is supposed to be the time the team's turning things on. Bam's averaging, again, prior to the Clipper game, 26 points, 11 rebounds, and 5 assists on 55% shooting and 83% from the line, 84% from the line on 7 attempts. Like, if you said you're going to get those numbers from Bam, those are number one type player numbers. I mean, there aren't a whole lot of teams in the league that you have a guy who's giving you those kind of complete numbers as their number one. And yet, the conversation we keep having is this team's not going anywhere with Bam or Tyler as a number one. Now, Bam's putting up the numbers; they're still not going anywhere. And I do think it's about others more than it's about him at this stage. But my concern is this, okay, on Bam, and I want you to kind of talk me out of this concern. We have been cheerleaders for Bam at this network. Obviously, Greg putting the no ceiling tag on him and all that. I've said he's untouchable. I know there are some who think we don't defend him enough. There are others who think we defend him way too much. With that said, I talk myself into this every season. Like, I look at parts of his season and I say, well, that's who he is now. Okay. But then he'll go through a month where he's not that at all. And the only difference this year is that the months happen sooner rather than later in the year, whereas he fell off a cliff. Right. Why is this different this time? Because I want you to give us some thought, because, I mean, just having Ware next to him where he doesn't have to do as much defensively, is that the reason this is different? Has he truly found himself, or are we going to talk about this and then there's going to be 3 weeks where he's taking 8 shots a game? Because that has happened before.
I will say this. I think so. Let's go back in history, right? Jimmy got suspended right after the 7th, right? Like, indefinitely.
Jimmy got suspended the first time after the 2 games after January 1st, right? And the Indiana game, the New Orleans game and the Indiana game, and then they basically told him to go away, essentially. Then he got suspended again.
So you have the Portland game. I think that was the last one he played.
I believe so. It's all the Jimmy stuff is running together at this point.
Yeah.
The trade, of course,
you had them. They went on the road from Milwaukee.
Right?
Yeah, they went on the road for Milwaukee and Brooklyn. Yeah, he didn't play
February 8th. I'm sorry. Yeah.
So let's say this. So I got it pulled up for January 15th, right?
Mm-hmm.
Against the Lakers. Hold on one second. It's just all right. So against the Lakers there, he was scoring around 10, 15 points.
Mm-hmm.
After, let's say, I think we did a pod.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on one second. We did a pod where we were tallying from his, first 20-point game. So first 115, 31 minutes, 10 points. Denver, 16, 11 points. 16 points, 11 rebounds. San Antonio, that's the game we first saw him with Ware. That's 6 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists. Then you had the Portland game, 12 points, 10 rebounds. Milwaukee, 11 points, 14 rebounds. Brooklyn, 17, 16. Now you have Orlando. That was the big statement game where they came back. They closed with Ware. It was Nico, Bam, Khalil, Duncan, Tyler. The only time we ever saw it line up. But you had 26 points. I'm going to run this off for you. You got 26, 21, 30, 23, 18, 18, 22, 27, 19, 24. You had 14 points, and you know what game that was? Atlanta.
Right.
Outside of that, you got 20, 18, 30, 19, 34, 29, 22, 23. So Bam has been very consistent and during those games. He hasn't taken less than 13 shots.
He hasn't taken less than 16 coming into the game against Clippers in all of March. I mean, we used to talk about 15 being the barometer for him. That's where Pat wanted him to get. He's clearing that consistently now. 16, 17, 21, 18, 16, 16. And then that's coming with free throws too. 7, 6, 7, 9, 6, 8. Like I said, the free throw numbers overall are down from last year, but that's not because of lately. It's because in February, even with Jimmy traded, he had a 0 free throw game. That was Indiana. He had a 2 free throw game. I'm talking about attempts against Atlanta, 4 against Atlanta, 3 against Milwaukee, 4 against Toronto, 2 against OKC. So you can make the argument he has found the way in March to put the two things together. He's getting his shots and getting to the line and defending. He's doing it all. They're not winning. And I'm only saying this because I got, I created this whole causation is not correlation thing with Tyler a couple of years ago, where he was every time he put up big numbers, they lost.
Mhm.
And again, this year, I was saying early in the year, I don't think it was because of him they were losing. When Tyler was scoring, it's because nobody else was. In part, Bam. It wasn't like I didn't think at the beginning of the season Tyler was taking shots from Bam because he wanted to. It's because Bam was not doing much. But now Bam is doing a lot. Tyler is struggling more, again, coming into the Clipper game.
Mhm.
And now they're still not winning. And I guess on the other side of this, I want to get to the question of, do you ever think the two of them will get on the same page to lead them to consistent winning? Or, and I know you may have a view on this that's different from some Heat fans, does Bam need not just another sort of sidekick, but another second sidekick here going forward? So I'm going to let you address that question as we go forward, because I know you have definite opinions about this. And again, we're trying to sort all this out. Okay. We're not going to, we have no agendas here at the Five Reasons Sports Network. I know people think we do, we don't. And I want to take all opinions, because when you're dealing with a bad team, which is what the Heat are right now, in my view, then at that point, everything needs to be on the table. That's just the way that this is. All right. Before we do, what should be on the table? Getting protection from hurricanes. Got to do it. South Florida. Nobody else going to do it for you. 305-484-4429. Our friends over at All Pro Construction Building. Go to All Pro Construction Builders. Go to allproconstructionbuilders.com or All Pro Construction Builders on Instagram. Danny and his team, big Miami Heat fans. Again, you can reach them at 305-484-4429. If you mention Five Reasons, not only do you get a free estimate, but you also get 5% off your entire order. So make sure you mention Five Reasons or Five on the Floor. Again, it's All Pro Construction Builders and allproconstructionbuilders.com. Okay, that's the first question here. Will we ever get to a point where Bam and Tyler, you think, will be playing well enough at the same time that this can be an above-average team?
This season?
I'm talking about it ever. Okay, I'm talking about ever, because we do not see it. We do not see the two of them playing at a high level together. Maybe one night, one possession, one quarter, but not for any consistent length of time. So I'm saying if you have a third guy like Wiggins, let's just say that's the third guy like Wiggins. Okay, that they have right now. Okay, they're not bring. Let's say you don't have a Durant, you don't have one of these other guys we're talking about, but a player of the level of Andrew Wiggins as your third guy. Do you ever see a scenario where Bam and Tyler will be able to get to their highest level at the same time, and that will lead to winning?
I mean, I think the best that they could probably do, this has been probably, I'm not gonna say the worst, but this has been a pretty bad stinker for Spo, right? And I guess next season, you get they don't make the playoffs, right? Or they make the play in, they lose in the play in, they keep their pick, they then have the Warriors pick unless the Warriors just fall off a cliff and then get into the lottery. So then you have 2 young draft picks. If they don't trade that for KD or for Trey or for whoever else, and they keep that and they get rid of, I guess, some of the edges around the team. Next season, I at best I can give them 7, right? I give them 7. Now you back into play. So
well, they seem to be living there. But do you think? Because I guess I want to get you on the record on this, because it's. Do you think that Tyler and Bam can ever be additive to each other? In other words, that 1 + 1 can equal 2.5. Because right now it seems like, at least this season, and we used to talk about. We used to talk about this with the Jimmy in the mix there too. It has seemed this year like it's 1 + 1 equals 1.5. Like they're subtracting from each other. One guy plays well and the other doesn't. All right. Is that fair? I mean, do you think that the two of them can ever get to a point where the sum is greater, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts?
unless you have a very dynamic player who is either one very charismatic or one very like they change the energy in the room and then things just fall in order. I think you're just gonna get the same shit. To be honest with you, right? Because they've been together so long, right? And
Right.
you always use the relationship analogy, and I think, man, I know a lot of people think I have something against Tyler. I don't, Tyler. If you listen to this, I mean, I don't. I think a change of scenery would help, right? Because I think old habits are hard to die, and unless you are really getting something that just completely changes everything, like a complete rebuild of the team, right? Here's a new philosophy. This is what we're doing different, yada yada. Then, unless you do that, then you're just gonna keep getting the same shit, even without Jimmy. And so I think a change of scenery is needed. A change of pace is needed. We've seen Ethan Bam's voice go from not really being that loud on the court to being very loud, like where he's constantly calling guys in
We're
for
also seeing the frustration on his face when certain shots are taken, which is something he used to hide
right.
more than he does now. And look, I don't mind him having more of a voice. He's the captain. He's been here
We've
the
been asking.
longest
We
now.
did a podcast about Bam needing to
Yeah.
step up and make his voice heard. We're hearing it. Ethan, you can talk about this. The floor is yours. What did Bam say at the end of one of them games, right? When they were getting close to the end, when he didn't get the ball, then finally got the ball and shots were going in because he was making them. What did he say to the sideline?
Get me the damn ball was basically it. That was essentially it. Which is what he needs to say. And the more times that he comes through, the more that it's on them to get it. They've never put a structure around him to bring out his best attributes offensively. Defensively, yes, we know he cleans everything up. Offense, he has some rough edges. We know that. He's not a great low post player. He keeps the ball too low sometimes. Sometimes he's too hesitant. But there's enough to work with there that if they had a guard who could get him the ball in spots that he was comfortable and force him to be decisive more consistently. I mean, look, I thought one of Bam's best stretches of play when I was not a Lowry fan, you know that, but like was when Kyle would throw the ball to him and scurry out of the way to force Bam to do something with it where he couldn't just send it back. It feels like they need a combination of someone who has some skill to get him some lobs. His dunks have come up lately, but they were way down early in the season.
Oh yeah.
Somebody who can get him some lobs, easy baskets, something in transition. And again, the Ware part, as Ware develops, which we know how raw he is, but as Ware develops to take care of some of the rebounding and some of the defense, then it frees Bam up. But I guess I just am trying. I try to be measured about Bam now because every time I have felt that a corner has been turned, then which it feels like lately,
it has.
but then there's slippage back into him being passive and him not doing these kind of things consistently. We'll close with this one, and again, we'll do more on this as we go forward because obviously there's going to be a lot of focus on Bam as a max player and as someone who is kind of carrying the franchise forward here. At Bam's best, could he ever be a number one offensively?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I don't think you get the best out of him like that. I will say, for any of you guys out there watching, I think what you're seeing from Bam right now is very encouraging because you and I were having conversations not only on here but on playback as well. Are we even seeing guys that can be the number 2s or number 3s on a championship team? Because it was that bad. I do think Bam has picked up his aggression a whole lot more on both ends, and he has been dependable on the offensive end. I know John Jablanca may not like some of the mid-range shots that he's taken, but you can see him being more confident in the one-on-ones, Ethan. You can see him being more confident in his three-point shots. It's still not at the frequency I would like because I feel like sometimes he does get hesitant in taking the three-point shots. But I do think Bam has been very aggressive about getting his shot and setting a tone, which is what you need for him. And I think that is important for him as the next evolution of him as a player, right? Because you're not with Jimmy Butler anymore, right? Like you're not that same Bam anymore. What does the next evolution of you look like, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing him slowly become a 3-level scorer, and you need that, especially in this day and age, and getting back to being somewhat of a playmaker in his capacity. But I think what you're looking for the rest of the year is how consistently can you do that? He's been doing that, but can you keep that up for the rest of the season and give Miami something to look forward to and plan for the next season and beyond, right? Like, all right, cool. We know that you are the captain, you are the franchise, you are the face of the franchise. How much can we build around you, right?
Mm-hmm.
As we scheme things, as we project and all of that, how do we build this championship team around you? Do we keep these young players? Do we trade these young players? All of that. Can they contribute? All of that depends on Bam.
I'll say one thing that's encouraging this year is that he could have folded it up after the first couple months because he was taking a lot of bleep for a lot of different reasons, and he hasn't. And I think that's a good sign here for him going forward. I do think that for him this offseason, to me, getting to the line consistently is such a big thing because this team needs it so badly. Like, they just don't have anybody else who can get there now that Jimmy's not there. Slow the game down. Brady and I have talked about that being huge in terms of a lot of their losses in the fourth quarter, that Jimmy would solve that stuff for them. Again, no one said Jimmy was a bad player. This was not about that. It was just a question of paying him going forward and dealing with everything else that came from it. But they have not been able to replace that. Bam needs to figure out a way to replace that. I think him getting more vocal with the officials is actually a good thing in that regard. This is who I am. I've been in this game long enough. I've won gold medals. I've been an all-star. Respect me a little bit more. I do think that's a positive. And look, he's going to be here a long time. I don't think he's someone that they're ever looking to move. And the one thing I will say here, and again, we appreciate our sponsors, All Pro Construction Builders. Again, check out at Prize Picks, use the code 5, and check out Off the Floor and also Eternal on Playback. The one thing I'll say here is Alonzo Mourning had his best offensive year at age 29 with the Heat. Okay. He came to the Heat when he was 25. He had his best offensive year when he was 25-30 right before he got sick. Bam's not 29 yet. There still can be growth here in terms of what he can provide. And now, like, Jimmy's not in the way. The question is, can they bring in somebody to help him build with that? But I would have liked to have seen the connection between him and Tyler, considering how long they've played together, to have been stronger where they added to each other. And it just has not worked out that way so far. All right, I want to thank Eternal. Thanks to all our listeners. We'll have more episodes coming forward. Greg and I are going to do something. We're going to rank the top 10 defensive players in Miami Heat history. So Bam's going to be somewhere on that list. We're actually going to poll that on Discord and Twitter, let you guys get involved in it. That, just like the worst games of the season, was very hard to narrow to 10. Have a good day, everybody.